Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. As some of you may know, I just came back from Thailand with a bit of a sore throat. So tonight's Dhamma talk may be a bit shorter than normal. So don't look away, it'll be over before you know it. Yeah, so we are in November, a month after the rains. So as usual, there's a fair amount of comings and goings. In the lay community, mostly going, but this year still maintaining a steady. Still have about 2, 4, 5 long-term lay people staying, relatively long-term-ish. That's good. And Lumpur Dhamma is in New Zealand for 3 weeks. After that, he heads up to Thailand in mid-December. And I just came back from a week in Thailand, going there to attend the Katina ceremony of Wat Bunyawat, Ajahn Monastery. And it was the time difference is always a bit difficult, but I always feel like it's a worthwhile trip. Just to go to Bunyawat, because I go there pretty regularly and know the monks over probably the last 10, 15 years. It does feels like home. Feels like coming back to family, friends, seeing the different monks. And also, as you know, we from the Theravadin tradition, so we follow the hierarchy. So even though there's lots of monks shifting around, I know which monk I'm sitting behind. So it's the same guy. So I know I was looking for this guy wherever he is, and that changes because it varies. Some of you may or may not know, with the big ceremonies in Thailand, the sangha grow exponentially the closer you get to the ceremony. So he has about 30. By the time we got there, it's about 40, and the next time it's like 60. I think the ceremony it was like more than 100, and so that always constantly shifting. And I don't read Thai, so they label your name with the Thai tag, but I don't read Thai, but I know where the monk I'm sitting behind is. I'm always looking for him. Good thing he comes out every day. There are certain monks who fast, so and it gets very confusing. But luckily this monk comes out to the dana every day. And it is nice. And you see this Thai monastery, Thai First Monastery of this tradition anyway. It's very good in sangha samagi, working together, harmony. And everybody, every day, even during this big ceremony, there's lots of preparation. We kind of work together. Like, there's, we'll sweep, everybody will sweep together for 15 minutes, and then we move to the sala, so people take different things, clean the sala together, and then we clean the toilets together. So everybody's, grab a towel, sweeping, and you just kind of follow along. So it's always this group dynamics following along. But it's good practice in kind of being mindful where everything is, being mindful what people are doing, how can you help, kind of pitching in what you can. I mean, I'm a visitor, so I don't really know too much. But you just look around, see what people are doing. People grabbing a rag, you grab a rag. They start wiping, you start wiping. And sometimes you check. And Ajahn Tan is in the monastery. It's very precise. It's good for mindfulness. Like the Buddha Rupa, Buddha statue, has a rag, a special rag to wipe that. The furniture has a special rag, you have to use that only. And then the building has another special rag. It's well written in Thai. And as long as you get, they're very good, they're very kind of sweet about it, but you're doing the wrong thing, they'll let you know, oh, no, this is a rag you're supposed to be using. So, yeah, so now that I get the hang of it, obviously I've been there for 10 years, I just hold up a rag and say, where am I supposed to go? They're like, okay, over there. Yeah, so I don't know, it's kind of, I find it, it's a nice change. And so much of the practice is adapting to different circumstances. As you know, here in the Wat Buddha Dhamma, being a senior monk, you constantly have to be organizing, deciding things, making decisions, organizing how the day flows, work projects. And it's nice just to be in a larger monastery where you're kind of middle-ish monk. Like I was probably number 10. There's 16 monks, I'm number 10. And so you kind of follow along, flow along with whatever everybody's doing. And it's also the tradition. As soon as you get to a monastery, you discreetly find out, what is the daily schedule, where you're supposed to be, what time. You want to meet Ajahn Tan, ask whether he's coming out for tea, is he receiving guests that day, and then his appointment so doesn't come out. So, and then Ajahn Tan being, lots of compassion, he knew a lot of monks arriving, so they would come and want to say hi to him. So they all have, I have a few things I need to talk to him about, but everybody does. So you just can't run up and say, I need this. So you feel it out. Is this, it's the right time to say these things. So I find in the practice in Thailand, the Thai forest tradition, there is a lot of, brings up a lot of sense of time and place, a lot of awareness of how to fit into things in a social situation. Like who is more senior to you bow to them. Whether it's 1 day or 1 week, you still bow to them, or 10 years. And who's your senior, you don't bow to them, obviously, because they get very confused. You bow back, you bow to them. So it has this kind of constant ebb and flow, and to be aware of one's position. And also, and that's just, but it does, I know, as you all know, it's just a social, a social convention. The Vinaya, who to bow to, when to bow to, is a social convention. And it doesn't mean that the person senior to you is spiritually more pure or whatnot, but it's just the way that the Buddha set up. And you bow to the more senior monks, use seniority, because he represents, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, represents seniority, represents the whole tradition towards you. And sometimes as a young monk, you obviously have a sense of self. So when you go to other monasteries, when you think, oh, the monks aren't keeping the rules so well, you're like, oh, I don't know what about to this monk. He's, using money, and he's eating in the afternoon. But as he's not a great meditator. But the more senior you become, I find it's a pleasure just to bow, and it's actually nicer to bow to a more senior monks that you may think, oh, he's not so fully enlightened. But it doesn't matter, because he is trying, he's representing the Buddha, he's representing an aspiration, the purity of intention. So, and you find that, as you're a young monk, you think, oh, so-and-so is bowing to me, ought to be good. And then, oh, sure, I bow too. But as you get senior, you appreciate that the paying respect is actually, you're benefiting from it. That the receiver is a person paying the respect, because it is allowing them to, to practice humility, to practice this openness, to be open. When you lower yourself, you're opening yourself, you're making yourself more vulnerable. You're opening yourself up to different type of experience. So I find that it's just the paying respects to the shrine, paying respects to other senior monks. It's actually a great opportunity to practice, and it's just recalling you're part of this. And I say this over and over again: you're part of this, the sangha, the monastic sangha, monastic community, and not just in this monastery. You're part of a monastic community that stretches all the way over Thailand, Sri Lanka, anywhere people practicing, and it stretches not just through space but also through time. All the past sangha, all the enlightened beings, all the monks and nuns, and that's been practiced over the time of the Buddha and going forward, and just reflecting that we're part of this beautiful, wholesome infrastructure. And it's just something that gives me a lot of happiness. And like I said, being part of something wholesome, something wonderful, and to be able to practice, be carrying on the Dhamma, and also allowing people to come and practice, allowing the Dhamma to Dhamma wheel could keep on spinning and rolling onwards to space and time, and just be part of that briefly. Obviously, in 50, 100 years' time, we'll all fade away. Nobody will remember who I am, what I did or didn't do. That's okay. As long as the Sangha keeps rolling on, as long as people are practicing, and that's a beautiful thing to be part of. And so it's just kind of reflecting to being part of a tradition that stretches all the way back to the Buddha, all the enlightened monks and nuns, and having the good fortune to be associated with someone as wonderful as Ajahn Tan. Brings a lot of sense of happiness and confidence. And sometimes you might think I'm, and I am. I admit I am biased. I am slightly, what would you say, hypocritical? Well, that's probably not the word hypocritical. Inconsistent maybe. In this way, I'm not, I come from Buddhism as an adult, so I'm not really a traditional Buddhist. My parents aren't Buddhist. I don't come to because, I always hear the chanting or something. I come because there's an emotional feeling. It makes sense. And it's so much of the teaching of the Buddha can be verified, and it's logical. Obviously, there's lots of things you can't be verified, but the bit that you can verify makes sense. And it's not a belief in some divine beings that gives you right. It's, you own your salvation. Your sila, samadhi, panya. The path is something we all have to do for ourselves. The Buddha, can only explain, encourage, but we all have to, do the work ourselves. So it came from that aspect of it. It's more a logical, scientific look of it, not this hocus pocus of, waving joysticks and praying for Nibbana. Buddha comes and saves you or something like that. So it didn't, that aspect did not appeal to me. But so I'm more of the Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, bring the Buddha, bring the teaching into your life. kind of more practical Buddhism. But then having obviously met Ajahn Tan and different teachers, and then this trip, after the ceremony, continuous ceremony, Ajahn Tan, this is among the monks only, he starts talking about all the Buddhas that came to the ceremony, attend the ceremony, and he started giving out this medallion that he says it's of one of the 4 great kings that offers protection. And he says one of them came and blessed it with his little staff himself. And generally it's like, whatever. But for some reason when Ajahn Tan talks about it, I do, because I've seen him, I've spent lots of time with him, that when he says it, obviously it's based in truth. He's not making it up, obviously, and he's not dreaming this up. It's some basic reality. Whether it's the same reality that I can access or can relate to, it's a matter of interpretation. Having said that, so it does give him that benefit of the doubt. But having said that, it doesn't mean that I will accept other people's accounts of this supernatural. So it's like, yeah, I only believe in the supernatural stuff. Ajahn Tan talks about it. But when other people talk about it, it's like, yeah, whatever, you're just fantasizing, or your Ajahn is just fantasizing. So, which is that some people say, well, yeah, well, you accept from one teacher, but you don't accept from the other teacher. And that's always kind of, sometimes it's always kind of a touchy thing. And even when the master says, these kind of paranormal, psychic phenomena that a lot of people can't access to, they do say, this is just something I see, my vision, my nimitta. It's not something that you monks should talk about too much with other people who don't have faith, because then they will get annoyed and they will start to not believe in Buddhism, and they say, well, this is not really part of the Eightfold Path. Buddha never talked about these other Buddhas coming back. Actually, he said, well, if you're enlightened, you should fade away and you don't come back. And it may not accord with what the scholarly people say, the scholar interpretation. But so much of that is, they don't say believe me only, but they said, if you have strong samadhi, you have good meditation, you have good deep wisdom, you have the spiritual perfection, you can see for yourself. And that's what gave me confidence about the teachings of Ajahn Tan, the teaching of Buddhism. While they say these other kind of non-conventional things, metaphysical things that we cannot confirm or deny either way, it's not a condition to the practice that I believe these things. I don't have to believe them, and you can still benefit from the practice of keeping sila, of being restrained, of practicing meditation, and of gaining insight into your own lives. So so that's not so much of it is like, yeah, as you work through Buddhism, you find the stuff that you can connect with, what works for yourself, and the other stuff you leave in the basket that you don't know. See what happens. Yeah. You don't have to accept all of it. And so much of the practice, going back to the hierarchy, is about following a set of norms, but also knowing that they're just norms. When we bow to another person, we bow into their Buddha nature. We're not saying that they're wonderful and you're worthless. Some people say, some people kind of infer that, but it's not what the bowing means. The bowing is just paying respect to the Buddha nature in each and every one of us that are practicing and honoring the system that the Buddha laid down. And that a sign of a good practitioner is that I can tell people sometimes, you can. A sign of a good practitioner is whether they can work with all situations, that they don't have to have the external authority but they can still learn to lead people from wherever they are. Ajahn Chah's famous phrase is that, how can you be a leader if you cannot follow others? And the opposite is also true. How can you be a follower? You haven't learned to lead. So sometimes I try to use that also as a teaching of moving people around different categories, moving people in different positions to see, how they react. Sometimes it's good to have a young person who's in charge of everything. That allows the person who has more experience, quote unquote, just to learn to be a bit more humble, to listen to another person's point of view. Because it's, if you're the seasoned practitioner, you should be able to follow orders from other people and not have the sense of self, oh, I know more than you do. Because that is the self. That is the sense of self coming up. And that is an ego. And we're here to practice is to rub away a sense of self, to not take seriously what we think is right. Because there are 10 ways to run a monastery. There are 5 ways to run a kitchen or to do a task. And sometimes it's just, this is really a stupid way that you're doing, but you know what? I'm going to do it your way. And I always tell people, whatever it is that I'm doing, you certainly can give me feedback. But also, don't be disappointed if I don't follow your advice. You do your job. You say, Ajahn, if you're going to do this, I think the monastery is going to blow up. Okay, thanks for that. I'll do this and see what happens. and that is fine. And I remember that's, I learned that from, living with Ajahn Brahm. We're very different. I said, Ajahn, I think you should do this. And he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. He goes, turns right. And that's fine. And after a while, you learn to to offer advices, but also to use as a practice that, that you don't have to be so invested that if they don't listen to you, you feel offended, annoyed, irritated. It's like, no, I did my best. I said, I think this is the way you should do it based on my worldly experience. But sometimes, in the monasteries, things are run differently. So sometimes, they're Dhamma perspective or there's different perspective. But sometimes, like with Bodhinyana, Ajahn reminds us over and over again that the monastery is not there to be run efficiently. The monastery is there to be run according to causes and conditions. Yes. So we may not make the best use of food. Sometimes we do waste a lot of food because, we get lots of offer and it, goes into compost in Bodhinyana anyway, and there's constant hand-wringing what to do with this food, but sometimes it's just, part of being in the monastery is just dealing with these things that don't always run perfectly. As you both know here, sometimes we have lots of food, sometimes we have no food. It's just, it goes in wave because we live on generosity of people, and it's not something that is efficient. That we buy our own food, cook our own food, then you can plan everything out. But that's not how the monastery works, and it shouldn't work that way. Part of our practice is accepting, the condition changing and trying to adapt to it, different ways. And it's just working. And it's a very important part of practice to learn to work with the present situation, however it is, to learn to adapt. And that's why I try to rotate people in the kitchen. When you're in charge of the kitchen, you have a say, you can do this. When you're not in charge of the kitchen, you should listen to people who are in charge and do it their way for 1 week. So that way we can learn to follow and to lead. And it's a skill that we all need to do. Some people like to follow, so I encourage them to do a bit more leading. Other people just want to lead and boss. I try to encourage them to learn to follow, to work with other people from the back of the room. Because it takes different skills, it takes adaptability. And that's a crucial part of the practice, to learn to investigate, the time and place. What's happening? Am I in charge of the project? Am I in charge of the project? Okay, I will just be a follower. They want me to split wood, I'll just split wood. And there's things that keep constantly changing, and that's why I find it, it's not a distraction, it's quite an interesting part of the practice. Because as we do different projects, we all have different kind of roles to play. And it's good to be mindful of what roles are we playing, what roles are we assigned today, what roles are we doing tomorrow. When it's time when you're in charge of the project, then it's good to be more proactive, to see what works, to ask for advice, and to see put forth the best effort to organize the project to make it work out good for other people. And then, or otherwise, when you're just assigned just to be an extra hand, extra leg, just to watch David, make sure he doesn't cut himself, then that's all. You just sit and watch David. You don't say, David, you should do this. No, David, you do that way. No, you do the other way. Because David's always saying, okay, yeah, thanks, but you're kind of distracting me now. Yeah, so it's good to always be aware of the different circumstances and to learn to adapt, and also to learn to, like I said, allow yourself to be out of the way and to come together, to work together for the welfare benefit of the monastery, benefit of the whole community. How can I improve the community? And that the suggestions that we make, and also to know that sometimes we make good suggestion and it's not taken up. Yeah, that's just welcome to the monastery. We all have different perspective, and we all have different ways of looking at things. And always the main thing is to have this attitude of openness, of being helpful. Like I said, we're not a big monastery. We're a few monasteries of 5 or 6 people only, and that what things you do, it means that another person doesn't have to do. So you're walking around, you're picking up a few tissue paper that are just sitting on the ground. Yeah, you could say, well, it's not mine. These people are so unmindful. They just leave tissues everywhere, and you can walk by, and it's fair enough. You can do that, or you can pick it up and say, when I pick up this tissue, it means somebody else don't have to pick that tissue up. So it's a service, an offer, a way to practice, great Dhamma in a monastery or anywhere else that you live and work with. The things that you do, right? Or vice versa, anything that you leave behind, you can wash after yourself. Just someone's got to go wash that dish. The dish, I always, remind people, the dish don't wash themselves and get put up by themselves. The tools that we leave outside are unwashed, don't wash themselves and replace themselves. So the more that we are mindful, the more that we can be sharp around our duties, our day-to-day activities, how we relate to each other, then the more that is a sign of our awareness, sign of how mindful we can, that we can keep this awareness, this satipanya, this awareness and wisdom be, further than just sitting in the cushion. So remind people, so much of the practice is just not just when you're sitting in the sala and watching your breath. It's what you do before you get to the sala and after you get to the sala. You arrive 20 minutes early just to clean things up, set things up for other people, or you arrive just in time and you jump and then run back. And it's fine, people can do that, but it's just a nicer way to approach things. If you arrive early, set things up every so often, look around at the end of the session, put everything away. That's also a nice thing, and you'll feel it. These little things that we do around the monastery, little things, the kindest thing that we do to each other, it's all part of the practice. We live long enough with each other, we know so-and-so likes this, so-and-so doesn't like that. So you try to go out of your way to just be, do little nice things to each other. And you avoid, offending people if they have a sensitive spot about certain things. So that's, it's all about the practice, it's all about mindfulness and awareness. Because and it takes this ability to pay attention to what's around us. What it does, It grounds you in the present moment, what's happening in the present moment. And it takes you away from our own self-obsessed ideas and views and opinions, our own little stories that we walk around talking to ourselves about. Because the mind can only do one thing. If it's present, looking around, what's the right thing to do, then it's there. But if it's sucked into its own drama, psychodrama of the narrative that we say to ourselves, the broken records over and over, and whatever it is that we say to ourselves and mumble on about, then we're not there. So that's why so much of the day is just being aware, time and place, where I am. And that's why we're just stickler for punctuality, because for you to arrive on time, you have to know the time, you better do where you're at. And I find that is so important, that with the Ajahn Chah tradition, there's precision of the core what, precision of where you have to be, what time you have to be, how you have to eat, how you have to wash your bowl, how you wear your robe, how you relate to a member of the opposite sex, not to be alone, not to come to physical contact. All these different rules can be mind-numbing, but for me, it's a great training in mindfulness, awareness of situations like, and learn to adapt to the changing situation. Because things are changing all the time. You can't adapt to just a day-to-day thing. How are you going to get more of the subtle awareness of the forces of greed, hatred, and delusion? They don't scream out, this is greed. They don't scream out irritation. Well, irritation may be more obvious. But certainly they don't scream out delusion. With the grounding in time and place, in awareness, hopefully we're training the mind just to be more present. Train the mind to take a wider perspective of what's happening around us. And it's an important part of the practice. It's just not about sitting and walking all the time. It's not about watching your breath or banging away on the mantra all day long, although that has its uses. So, as we are transitioning out for the lots of comings and goings, lots of movement, or some movement, we're not a big monastery, some movement with the community. Hopefully we continue just to grow in the Dhamma, grow in wholesome states, grow in ability to adapt, to change to situation, and to find ways that we can work as a group for the well-being benefit of the community, of the monastery, the people that come and practice with us. And because we are a small community, you'll notice that every time there's a new person, there's a slight change in dynamics. Some people are more quiet and pulls them on. Some people are more chatty, pulls them on straight. So just being aware of this dynamics, that is just part of the practice. And to also, when you have to go to town to do things, to buy things, also be aware and not allow your mindfulness to be shaken overly too much when you have to do these activities. So it's an ongoing practice, ongoing way to adapt to change the situation. But I think the more we persist, this group dynamics of practicing in the group, of giving yourself to the schedule, giving yourself to the chores, giving yourself to something bigger, to the community, you'll find that it's rubbing away a sense of self. It's lessening your sense of ego. And the less ego you have, the less suffering you have. The more you learn to adapt, to change. But also it allows us to see, I am attached. I like it when people listen to me. I don't like when people don't listen to me. Oh, that's interesting. Oh yeah, that's the sense of self sitting right there. Oh yeah. I don't know why so-and-so doesn't listen to me. I have all the answers, And that's what everybody thinks. I've never met an Anagarika or Anagarika who thinks they can't run the monastery better than the monks, than the abbot. Ajahn, yeah. You're doing okay, but you should be doing this, and this. Okay, yeah, thanks. And that's fine. That's what I thought when I was in Anagarika. I was like, oh yeah, I got it worked out. I should write a manual how to run a monastery. Not just the one in Thailand, but all over the Ajahn Chah tradition. I should want to write a whole manual. Every monastery in Ajahn Chah tradition should be run. Much more efficient that way. But that's fine. Knowing that, we don't take it personally. People are conditioned. They'll act according to condition. All you can do is offer the advice, offer feedbacks. And that's another thing. If your feedbacks aren't taken, that's all you can do. I always try to remind people, you said, morning chant is at 4. People don't want to show up. Don't suffer of it. Just let it go. Obviously, maybe they're sick. Maybe they're, having insomnia. They can't sleep. So just your job is just let people know what the expectation is and not to suffer over people's, idiosyncrasies, people's differences. Because we're all here to practice. And all we do is offer an opportunity to practice. That's why I remind people, I don't get extra spiritual points because more people show up in the morning. That's not how it works. But it is nicer when we all support each other. And that's why we're here, to support each other in the practice. But also having to walk our own path. Yeah. So it's not like we have to get everybody in the sala for us to practice. Once you sit and close your eyes, it's just you and your breath. Everybody else hopefully fades away. They're not part of your consciousness anymore. So on this Saturday night in November, having gotten back from Thailand, I thought it was a good trip. Being in Thailand, being with Ajahn Tan, briefly, being with the Sangha. But I always feel really great coming back. I know I'm homeless, but this feels like home. Every time I go into the gate, coming down the hill, up there, coming down the hill, it's like, oh, wow, finally back home. Yeah, so it is nice to be back. And nice to be part of, a beautiful infrastructure, part of Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Don't underestimate that. Part of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Something that stretches beyond time and space. Part of this, just a little thing, a little speck of it. Of millions and millions of souls and beings spreading everywhere. Inclining towards goodness, inclining towards peace, inclining towards wisdom. Inclining towards harmony. Just the intention. Yeah, we don't get it wrong, we make mistakes, and that's fine. But the fact that we're intending towards these beautiful things, it's a wonderful blessing. So I offer that for your reflection